This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Hello and welcome out to the lobby of the Fargo Dome. It is semifinal Saturday. Kyle Emanuel, Alex Egan here with you. We will be with you for the next 60 minutes, getting you set for North Dakota State and Montana State playing in the FCS semifinals. We're here once again, the last game of the decade here in the Fargo Dome, and how fitting it's an FCS semifinal.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy to think about, Alex.
Right?
This is the last game of the decade, and this, I think for the first time in a while, you can feel there's a buzz. You can feel it in this lobby. You felt it all week. I think it started early. Montana State fans buying up tickets. We heard about that really early on. I don't think any Bison fans wanted to see too many Bobcat fans here. There was some kind of iffy comments, I guess you could say, from their coach, Coach Choate, that I was pretty vocal about it myself. So I think there is a buzz, regardless of whether the fact this is a semifinal game. There is a buzz around this, and I'm excited to see what the Fargo Dome is like today.
We'll head out to the tailgate lot a little bit later on with Mike Morkin, but just here in the lobby, I'm seeing a lot of Montana State fans that are getting in line, getting in will call to get their tickets. There's going to be a boisterous crowd on both sides, I think, today, and it might be the first time that NDSU actually might have to deal with some noise when they're on offense in the Fargo Dome.
Well, and we talked about we might see a couple of Montana State fans in the student section if those aren't sold. So, I mean, regardless, it's going to be a full stadium. Look, I've played in a lot of stadiums where you didn't have all your home fans. It makes for good energy regardless.
You were a Charger, so we know.
Yes, you probably saw that live with the Viking. Yes, but it's not going to be that bad, but it'll be fun. It'll be interesting to see how many fans really do show up for Montana State. We've seen quite a few in line right here, right now.
Yeah, they're filling into the bowl, and that's where we will go right now, down to the field with Ryan Gellner, Brian Sean, and Lee Timmerman. Hey, guys, how we doing?
Very good, Alex, and welcome down to field level, where we guys start with some breaking news on the NDSU sideline. Phoenix Sproles not in uniform today for North Dakota State. His teammates are. We would assume that means that Phoenix Sproles is out, and all of a sudden the Bison have an issue at wide receiver.
Yeah, and we see Braylon Henderson, the true freshman out of Texas, is dressed today. This might be a game he is asked to play as one game left in the 4-game redshirt rule, so maybe number 12 gets some of those reps at receiver. Cole Jacob, Andy Voy, and some of those other guys going to have to be ready to step in along with Christian Watson now in the receiving corps.
It may be about running the football, Lee. Both these teams love to run the football.
Well, if you look at the other side of the bracket, you'd have to say the same thing about that. So is it a big surprise that 4 running teams are in the semifinals? I think not. The biggest thing, I think, when you take a look at this Montana State team defensively, I think it's a better defense than the one the Bison faced last year, just because this defense, this Bobcats defense, is not giving up the big plays like it did last year. Remember, the Bison had 38 points at halftime against these guys a year ago. That was in the second round, though, not in the semifinals.
Montana State is 7th in the nation in running the football. North Dakota State 4th in the nation in running the football. And then both teams can stop the run as well. Let's stop and talk about the atmosphere. It has a different feeling today.
Yeah, I get the feeling that people, after last week, realize, okay, we got to show up in force. We got to be loud today. Now, I will say this. The 14,000 that were here last week were allowed 14,000. But now when you have a trip to Frisco on the line, it's the last game of the year of the Fargo Dome. It is sold out. I think it's going to be loud. It should be electric and a lot of fun.
It's going to be fun today, Lee.
Certainly will be a very good thing. And for many of the same reasons what Brian was just talking about, I think people have been waiting for this week, and then if the Bison can head to Frisco next week, I think they might be saving up their voices for this week, so I think it's going to be loud.
Should be fun. From down here, you can see behind us, it's an all-green look for the Bison today. Alex?
All right, thank you very much, guys. We'll check in with those guys later on in the show. You saw a couple of the guys warming up there. They're going with the green out again, the code green game for this game.
Yeah, they mixed it up on me a little bit. I was calling for a gold rush, personally. That was not through the school, but I personally was calling for a gold rush. I got the socks on, I got the tie. I messed up, but I'm definitely okay with code green, obviously, as an old defensive guy.
Well, we saw Montana State come into the Dome last year. Obviously, it was in a different round. It was a different Montana State team than what we've seen. And this is a different Bison team than what we've seen. But we wanted to show you this graphically, that when teams make a return trip in the playoffs, they usually fare better the second time around in the Fargo Dome. If we can pull up that graphic, you see Georgia Southern, when they came here in 2011 in the semifinals, NDSU routed them 35-7. Next year, 23-20. What do you remember about? You played in all of these games. What's
Yeah.
different about the second time a team comes in here?
Well, there's a lot different. I remember that Georgia Southern team. First off, I just think the atmosphere no longer shocks them when you come in the second time. That Georgia Southern team, I've told this story a lot, but we came out of the tunnel and they were there already, like staring at us from across the sideline. Like they were ready. It was a different team. They had a better quarterback. They had a guy named Jarek McKinnon. Vikings fans might remember him. He was their quarterback. So that obviously helped them being a better team. But I also think just the physicality and the style that NDSU plays. When you play in the Valley, obviously Valley teams know about it, but I think it kind of shocks you a little bit. Like, oh, we really have to grind and pound for 4 quarters with this team. Like, we have to do that. And I don't think teams are necessarily ready for that the first time they come around. Then they come to the Fargo Dome the second time. They know what to expect a little bit. The atmosphere is not a shock. The style of play is not a shock, and they're a little bit angry. It's a revenge game. It really is, and I've said this too before. I think it's easier to game plan. It's easier to game plan after you lose a game than it is when you win, I think, personally, because you can go back and say, well, this is what NDSU did, and they had success with it. Why wouldn't they do it again? Let's see how we can attack that.
Well, and we saw it last week with what Illinois State did. They were a different team coming in here. Obviously, that game earlier in the season was at Illinois State, and NDSU jumped out to an early lead, but Illinois State was ready. They were prepared for the Fargo Dome. It wasn't a shock to them when they came in here, and they only gave up 9 points.
Yeah, and they actually hadn't been to the Dome either. That game was in Illinois State, but they came in with a much better defense than we saw that first game. We knew statistically they had a really good defense. They just didn't show up the first time. They came back. They were not intimidated. They knew what to expect a little bit. Like I said, I think game plan, they came in with a really good game plan. Like, we're going to blitz you off the edge. We're not going to let you run the ball, and we're going to play tight man-to-man coverage and see what you can do. And it worked out for them. Well, almost worked out for them.
Yeah, certainly would like to see the offense get in the end zone today for the Bison. Let's go out to the tailgate lot. Not as bad today.
Beautiful
Weather's
day.
nice. It's a semifinal Saturday. We join Mike Morgan in the tailgate lot. Mike?
All right, we're here out in the tailgate section, and I'm with a fun bunch of people here. Bison fans, yeah. We are playing for gift certificates to Big Irv's, either in Horace or in Rose Creek, and we thank Big Irv's for being our sponsor this year. And I've got 2 contestants. Let's go ladies first, shall we? Your name, please?
Mandy Hofstad.
All right, Mandy. No one has gotten this wrong yet in the 3 years that we've been playing, so good luck, all right? And you can ask help from the crowd, all right? Here's our first question. What number did Trey Lance wear during his high school football career? Is it 9 or is it 15? And you can ask the crowd.
9.
Are you sure? Is that a good answer?
9?
9 is your final answer?
9.
It is 9. You win! Congratulations so much. You win a $50 gift card
Awesome.
to Big Irv's. Thank you so much. That was easy. Your name, please?
Scott.
Ready to play?
Absolutely.
All right. What brand, style, and color car does Trey Lance drive? Is it a white Ford Taurus or a red BMW Z4? Ooh. Okay.
We're going to go with the white Ford Taurus.
And I'm glad you did, because that's correct. A white Ford Taurus. Someday I'm guessing you'll be driving a red BMW. Thank you so much, folks, for playing. Wasn't that fun? That was fun. How about Go Bison? Go Bison!
The Bison and the Bobcats getting set to take on a trip to Frisco on the line. Stay with us as we got more Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show right after this.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show.
The Bobcats are in the building, making their second trip in as many seasons, looking for a spot in Frisco today as they get set to take on North Dakota State. We welcome you back to the lobby of the Fargo Dome. North Dakota State and Montana State here in the FCS semifinals. Let's learn a little bit more about those Bobcats as Ryan Gellner catches up with the voice of the Bobcats. Ryan?
All right, thanks, Alex. Jason Elvine has called play-by-play for the Montana State Bobcats this year. And when you look at this game, Jason, it really comes down to line play. And we just got done talking about that, but tell us your thoughts on both teams' lines.
Well, they're both fantastic. 3 offensive linemen for North Dakota State, named all Missouri Valley first team, and then you got shooting the second team member as well. So 4 guys get postseason honors. They're a big physical front. But Montana State learned a lesson here last year that they had to be bigger, stronger, more physical up front. I think they've been able to do that. Derek Marks right now is playing at a very elite level. Jason Skrempos has really come on of late. Chase Benson has been solid in the middle for the Bobcats defensive front. So I think really that's where, with what both of these teams want to do, that's where today's going to be won and lost.
And both teams are very similar. Montana State wants to run the ball, and you've been able to run it really well, 265 yards a game.
Well, and that's offensive line, the veteran group that we had from last year, all a year older. Mitch Brott making his 50th start of his career, 50 consecutive, hasn't missed a start. That's the most in MSU history. He's really the tone setter for this team. He doesn't say much. He's not a real vocal guy, but by the way he plays, this line follows. And then they've been able to piece it together with the running backs. Isaiah Fonse missed the bulk of the season, but he has come on here late, had nearly 200 yards last week against Austin Peay, and that guy's a game changer when he gets the ball in his hands.
Quarterback-wise, Tucker Rovig has some really nice weapons.
He does, and he's come on late as well. And going back to the UC Davis game, I think that's really where his season turned. He was able to complete a couple deep balls, two to Kevin Cassis, one to Travis Johnson. You mentioned those weapons, and they were able to make that vertical threat more prolific here towards the end of the season. They've been able to connect on a few of those deep balls, and he's playing at a really high level right now. Has only one interception in the last 6 games, so he is right now maybe the key ingredient, one of those sleepers that you have to count on right now.
What do you think the difference is in this football game today?
Turnovers. You guys don't turn the football over, and if you can get one, if you can steal one, you have to convert it. You guys have had 5 turnovers all year long. Trey Lance hasn't thrown an interception. I mean, that's crazy to me. In 14 games, there hasn't been a tip ball or a misread or it bounces off the hands of a receiver. So I think if you get one, if you're Montana State, you have to turn it into 7 points.
Appreciate your time. Have a great call today.
Thanks, Ryan.
Guys, back upstairs to you.
All right, thank you very much, Ryan. Yeah, we look at this Montana State team, and you can talk about the line play, you can talk about the running backs that Montana State possesses, but I really think it comes down to the quarterback play. And like most football games, it comes down to the quarterback play. Yeah. NDSU's got a pretty good one going for them.
He's not bad.
Yeah, redshirt freshman Trey Lance, but it's Tucker Rovig on the other side. We take a look at Trey's numbers, and he has been everything he wanted to. I think last week there was a little bit of the reins were on the offense a little bit last week. I think they were pretty conservative in what they were doing. That's not to say that Trey was doing anything wrong. There were a few throws that I think he probably wanted back, but still a pretty good performance. And again, that number that we look at, it's right next to the touchdown number. It's a 0 still in that interception column.
25 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Add to that 11 rushing touchdowns. Throughout the year, obviously, we talk about him every single week. He's been awesome. The last couple weeks, we haven't seen him unleashed. Like you mentioned, Alex, the offense was a little bit conservative last week. I don't think you were going to see that today. I think you're going to have to open it up. Montana State packs a better offense than Illinois State did, and I think he's going to have to do a little bit more. And I think we're going to see more in the running game as well. Obviously, we'll get into that later, but Montana State does a lot of Wildcat. I think you're going to see a lot of quarterback run game today from Trey Lance.
I think the interesting thing, we only saw them really take the one shot to Christian Watson down the field. Yep. There was the shot at the end of the half, but really that's a Hail Mary situation anyways. You knew that they were going to do that, but in gameplay, there was only the one shot to Christian Watson, and they ended up making a big connection. But again, red zone is where the important thing is, and it's getting touchdowns and not field goals that I think the importance that the offense has really emphasized this week in practice.
Yeah, they're really going to open it up this week. I think you're going to see Christian Watson heavily involved in this game plan. I just think last week Matt Entz looked at this Illinois State team like, I don't think they can score on us.
Yeah.
I'm going to run the ball and do what we do well. And I think they thought maybe they'd break through on some of those runs. It just didn't happen. That was a really good Illinois State front seven.
Yeah.
And they did, like I said, they had a really good game plan. I think we're going to see Trey Lance open it up, and he does need to be really good in the red zone, whether that's running or throwing. NDSU needs to finish with touchdowns, because if they even score one touchdown in that game last week, it's not even close.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a 17-3 game in that game feels like you're up by 30 the way that game was going. So it'll be opened up a little bit more today, I believe.
Completely different complexion if any one of those trips in the red zone results in a touchdown. Right. Tucker Rovig is the quarterback for Montana State, and it's been an unusual road for Tucker as he has become the starter at Montana State. But here are a look at his numbers, and he's not bad. He's not a bad quarterback throwing the football. He takes care of the football. Only 4 interceptions. I know we kind of gosh over, Trey Lance's 0, but 4 over the course of 14, 15 games. That's pretty darn impressive.
Well, and the number I like here is 61.9%, almost 62% completion percentage.
Yeah.
You like to see that number above 60, and there's been a lot of times this year NDSU's played quarterbacks that have been below it, and we've seen the results, they can't really do much with it. I think he's going to be asked to hand the ball a lot off today. They're going to do some wildcat quarterbacks and quarterback play, and then they're going to take some play action shots. And if he can take care of it, that's going to be key for Montana State.
He's interesting because he's 6'5", 220. He looks the part. He looks the part of a good quarterback.
Right.
That's about the same size that Carson was, maybe a little bit taller.
Yep.
But the interesting thing is they run the quarterback a lot. They just don't run Rovic.
Don't run him, yeah.
Because he will option out or move out, trade shift, and motion out to a wide receiver slot, and then they'll have Ifanse back there running the Wildcat or one of their other guys running the Wildcat. So they like to do the +1 run game.
Oh, yeah.
It's just not with Tucker Rovic.
Which is interesting. And you're going to see guys, Isaiah Ifanse and Travis Johnson, a wide receiver, who actually, if you look, Montana State actually reminds me a lot of NDSU a little bit and what they like to do. I don't think they're as good at passing game. Obviously, they're not as good defensively, but just like similar styles. They like to run the ball. They're going to take play action shots. They play really good defense. They have a good defensive front, and they have a lot of guys that run the football. And if you look at their numbers, I think they have 4 guys over 400 yards. NDSU has 4 over 600 yards.
Yeah.
So they're going to spread it out a lot. There's going to be a lot of guys running the ball. We thought we'd see this last week with James Robinson, maybe a little more Wildcat, switched it up against this NDSU defense. We didn't see it. You're going to see it this week.
Oh, yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, you could talk about offense all you want, it's going to come down to these defenses. If NDSU can get to 20 points, 21 points, I think this game is over. That's all they got to get to.
It's a code green game, so you know the defense is going to show up. Last time they did it was zero points on the board against Missouri State.
If you look at this NDSU defense, and I've talked about, they give up some rushing yards. They don't give up points. They just don't. They don't give up points. The only time teams have gone over 20 has been in garbage time. So it's going to come down to that defense. I think if NDSU holds them under 10, I mean, it's a win for North Dakota State.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what defense wins you championships, right?
Always.
All right, we're going to step aside. We come back. We've got so much more here from the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show. Stay with us.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football pregame show.
It's beginning to look a lot like football time here at the Fargo Dome as the Bobcats and the Bison get set to square off in the FCS semifinals, the 9th straight trip for the Bison to the FCS semifinals. Hard to believe. They've done it pretty much every year this decade. It's the final game of the decade in the Fargo Dome. Let's step away from the game right now. We'll go down to Ryan Gellner, and he's got our Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine injury report. Ryan?
Health has given us a really neat look inside what is the doctor's office, inside the training room here at NDSU. Dr. Bruce Pyatt joins us. Everything from an x-ray machine to behind us, areas where you can do sutures. But today what we're going to talk about is injecting athletes, those athletes that may come in. They've got an ailment or two. Maybe they're sick from the flu, they're dehydrated. But take us through that process here inside the doctor room.
Oh, happy to do it. You know, we've had some pretty famous moments in this room that it would be fun to talk about someday in a book, but it's been interesting to watch. When the athlete gets ill and gets sick, they're really pushed to get back out on the field, and it's amazing to me what they can do, even though they just feel horrendous. You think about your worst illness that you've had, where you're vomiting, you have diarrhea, you can hardly get out of bed, and they're going out and letting 300-pound guys push them around and stuff. It's always amazing to me what they can do. But we try to help them as much as we can. We'll bring athletes in here even before the game, or sometimes in the middle of the game if we need to, if they're that ill and they're not able to keep fluids down orally. We'll bring them in and we'll give them IV fluid like we have set up here.
Look at this. This is a bag of IV fluid, just like you would see in the doctor's office at the hospital. You can do that here. And you told us that you would give an athlete at least, and I don't know if you can see how much fluid is in this bag, you'd give them at least 1 bag of fluid.
Yeah, so this is a liter of what we call lactated ringers, and so it's got a lot of the electrolytes that you would normally find in your bloodstream, and will help all of your muscle cells and all your organs to be able to perform at their very best. And so we're going to get at least 1 in them, and it depends on the time. We may get 1.5, sometimes 2, depending on how ill they are. I can remember times we've had athletes in here that were under the clock, getting pressure from the offensive or defensive coaches saying we need this guy at this point, and so we're pushing as much as we can up till that point.
And it's really impressive how much better the athlete feels after getting one of these in. If you've ever been sick and gotten one of these drips, it's pretty impressive how well you feel, how quickly you feel well.
Yeah, it really does. A lot of the illness that you feel all the time is your dehydration, and that just makes you weaker and much more tired. You lose strength with that. And if you can get a little bit of hydration, you get that little bit of energy push right at that point. Now, there are times, too, that we may give them an antiemetic or something that will help stop or slow down the nausea or the vomiting, just like we use some of the medications sometimes that are used with cancer patients and things like that to try to help them. So we'll do what we can to make them as comfortable as we can and as safe as they can be.
Good stuff from inside the doctor's office here at North Dakota State. And our thanks to Sanford and to Dr. Pyatt for joining us all season long. It's been fun. We'll throw it back to you guys.
All right, great stuff there. Thank you very much, Ryan. Let's take a look at who is not playing today for the Bison, and it's a big one. Phoenix Sproles, the wide receiver, been dealing with a little bit of a shoulder injury the last couple of games. We have gotten word he is not going to be dressed today, so Phoenix Sproles will be out. That'll be a challenge for Trey Lance and this Bison offense as they get set and try to put some more points on the board, or certainly get in the end zone more than they did last week, which was 0 times. They did not score a touchdown last week. First time since 2014 the Bison were held without a touchdown. All right, let's go down to the field. Ryan Gellner and Kyle Emanuel standing by. Fellas, show us how it's done.
Yeah, guys, one of the favorite segments, how it's done, standing here with the All-American Kyle Emanuel. You played against some Wildcat teams, and that's one of the things that we'll see today from Montana State.
Yeah, they do it with a lot of different guys, too. So it's one of those things you have to look at from what they're going to do standpoint. Who does what? You know, they'll bring in Travis Johnson, a wide receiver, former quarterback, I believe.
Right.
Is he going to throw the ball more? They do it with Isaiah Fonte. He's a running back. Is he going to run it more? And usually what comes with Wildcat is a lot of shifts, a lot of motions. There's a lot of things happening pre-snap and as the ball is snapped. And as we talked about last week, that makes your run fits a little bit more difficult.
Let's go back to just the pure definition of Wildcat. Yep. It's generally a skill position player, a running back, wide receiver, and somebody that might be able to throw it. They'll line up as quarterback, and oftentimes you'll see the quarterback then go get away from the action. They'll line up as wide receiver. It's important to know that those guys can run, but you have to respect the pass as well at times.
Yeah, you do. It's still, I remember, you know, when I was back in NDSU, I feel like we'd shift this, or we'd check to just the easy coverage, right? Something easy, a basic thing that we know that everyone can get on the same page. There's not a lot of thinking. Everyone can get lined up. You know where those run fits are. But you have to be able to respect it. But you also have to know we talk about the +1 running game, right? It's +1 because the quarterback's now carrying it. I've talked about this before too, but the math just it favors the offense when you have a Wildcat running back. Obviously, you have more of a skilled guy as well. It just makes it a little more difficult. And we thought we'd see it last week from James Robinson. You're definitely going to see it this week.
In 30 seconds or so, Kyle, as a defensive player, how many times have you tried to bait that guy? You might take a step forward knowing that and then a step backwards. How much of that goes on?
Well, yeah, especially at the defensive end. That's usually a game plan thing. Like, hey, sometimes you would just run straight at the guy and you run straight at the mesh point. Now you have to decide. And so we'll have to see what the defensive ends like to do in this game. I'm excited to see what Derek Tuscan can do when these Wildcat guys get in there.
That's how it's done against the Wildcat. We're back to the Fargo Dome. Montana State and North Dakota State, the winner to Frisco, Texas. More after this.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
All right, welcome back to the tailgate section, and I'm with another fun bunch, aren't I? Yeah. And we've got a couple of contestants, the bright flowers in this tailgate section. Let's go with you first. Your name?
Marisha,
and where are you from?
West Fargo.
Okay, West Fargo. It didn't matter, but we're glad you're from local, okay? Here we go. Here's the question. Including today's game, how many consecutive semifinal appearances is this for the NDSU Bison? Is it 9 or is it 10? You can ask the crowd.
What do you guys think? 9. It's 9.
They seem pretty confident.
Yep.
And they should be, because that is the correct answer. 9. Congratulations. You win a $50 gift card to Big Herbs, and you can use it either at Rose Creek or at Horace.
Nice. Thank you.
All righty. Congratulations on that. Your name?
Dondi.
Here we go. Including Montana State, how many teams have the Bison played that have state in the name? And Illinois State, they played them twice, so that's 2. Is it 6 or is it 7? Ooh, got to do some math here, everybody. 6 or 7?
I'm going to 6.
I'm going to say 6.
6? Is she right?
6.
She's always right, isn't she?
She's always.
She's always right, and she should be. It is 6. Okay, for you folks at home and folks here, Montana State, Illinois State twice, Youngstown State, South Dakota State, and Missouri State. Missouri State, that's your 6. Congratulations, you won a gift card. And thanks so much for everybody playing this year. We enjoy doing this, and let's hope we're doing this down in Frisco in a few weeks, right? Yeah. Come on, how about a cheer?
Hey, Mike, thank you very much, and welcome back inside the Fargo Dome where North Dakota State gets set for Montana State. Brian Sean, Lee Timmerman back inside the lobby as the Bison get ready for football. We get ready for your keys to the football game, brought to you by Dakota Magic Casino. And the first key this week, maybe a pretty obvious one. We've been talking about it for some time, but that's adjustments. The Bobcats do a nice job of keeping you off balance. They run the football with a couple different kids. They have playmakers at wide receiver, and then Lee, they throw in the Wildcat as well. They can be tough to defend.
It certainly can be. I had a nice conversation with Grant Olson, the linebacker coach, and Grant said one of the things they're doing this week that's a little bit different. Instead of worrying about what formation they're in, they more worried about who's on the field. If you see 2 running back numbers on the field, Grant says 90% of the time or more, that's going to be a running play. When you see a wide receiver number 10 or 85 come into the backfield, most of the time that's going to be an option. This Bobcat team can run the ball very well. Expect to see what Grant called big personnel. Remember last week against Illinois State, a 5th defensive lineman? That's going to happen today too.
So our first key is adjustments, and that's NDSU on defense. Flipping sides to the offensive side of the ball, it's execution. We've talked about this for a couple of weeks. The Bison simply need touchdowns. The last 4 games, NDSU offense, it just hasn't been firing on all cylinders. Some of that is a result of good defense. Some of that is a result of NDSU just not getting in the end zone.
You know, and Matt N said it this week on Monday, hey, for us to make adjustments, we still have to be able to execute our base stuff initially so we can make adjustments off of that. And I think North Dakota State had opportunities. There were a few missed plays last week. Trey Lance underthrows Christian Watson. Christian Watson down the sideline looks to be a touchdown, a shoestring tackle. They were just inches away from having a 14 or 17-point lead in that game. So at the end of the day, if you can just make those plays when you have the opportunities, you're going to be in good shape. And I think the Bison, talking to Josh Cattell on the sideline today, who's recruiting coordinator, says, I know our guys are ready to play. They're ready to get out here and get going, and I think they will be.
Building on that, Lee, we go to number 3 on our keys to the game, brought to you by Dakota Magic Casino. And that's score inside the red zone. And that's been a troubled area for North Dakota State lately. The red zone's where the Bison have had tough sledding. Last week, 3 times inside the red zone. They got points, but all 3 were field goals.
Yeah, for many of the same things Brian was talking about execution, it becomes a little more critical in the red zone. But if the Bison do get 1 touchdown last week, all the pressure was off. I mean, the pressure stayed to the final buzzer because it was a 6-point football game, but any one of those turns into a touchdown, and the Bison really cruise to a victory instead of kind of have that nervous type victory. But yeah, touchdowns I think will be a little bit more important today because this Bobcat offense has a lot more potential scoring in it than the Illinois State offense did.
One key that didn't make our keys to the football game is turnovers. Now, neither team turns the ball over. It feels like whoever turns it over today might be in trouble.
Yeah, I don't think either team can afford to do it. I just think that the margin for error when you get to these semifinal games gets razor thin. And both teams have done a good job of taking care of the ball. And even though the North Dakota State offense in the second half was not very good, the Bison still did not turn the football over. As a matter of fact, the last time they have turned it over, you got to go back to the game in Brookings, the South Dakota State and Dimitri Williams halfback pass. That's the last time that NDSU's committed one. So they've done a good job there at least. Every drive has ended with a kick, and I know that's been a big focus here the last several years.
Well, that's the only interception NDSU has had was when the running back threw it. But you look on the other side, these Bobcat quarterbacks, and there's been more than one of them that are throwing, but one kid throws it most of the time, but he doesn't put the ball in harm's way either. I think and the team only has 4 picks all year.
One more thing to watch for, the Bobcats, they don't give up quarterback sacks, less than 1 a game.
Yeah, that's something that for North Dakota State you have to be mindful of. That I think Randy Choate said, we are much better. We're much better rounded on the offensive and defensive lines than we were last year. And I think you've seen that in the numbers, the way it's played out. They've done a nice job in the running game, both in run blocking and also in pass protection as well. So we'll see how much North Dakota State decides to bring extra pressure to heat up this quarterback Rovig, or if they want to sit back and try to make him make perfect throws into tight windows and zone coverage.
This place is hopping. You can't see it on camera right now, but the lobby of the Fargo Dome is jam-packed.
Yeah.
From
Holy
entry
cow.
to door. You couldn't fit more people in here. This, friends, is going to be fun. There's some of the lobby there. And
That's
on the
not
other,
busy part.
the other side of this, it is jam-packed here inside the Fargo Dome. Football is right around the corner. We'll bring you right up to kickoff. Then you can switch over to ESPN2. We've got you covered as more from the pregame show right after this.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Well, this is the insanity we were talking about from door to door. As you enter the Fargo Dome, those are the entrance doors, and then behind me on this side is the line from the entryway into the Fargo Dome, and it is flat out jam-packed. This place will be rocking this afternoon. The Bison have won 27 straight games here inside the Fargo Dome. It's the longest active record in Division I and Missouri Valley Conference record, but it's not an NDSU record. That begins this week's Herdline News, and it's brought to you by Gate City Bank. A win today, and the Bison would win their all-time win mark at 28 straight home wins. The Herd did that from 1964 to 1969. North Dakota State left tackle Dylan Radens and defensive end Derek Tuska. They were both named the Associated Press FCS All-American First-Teamers, headlining 5 NDSU selections to 3 teams. Bison quarterback Trey Lance and right guard Zach Johnson were selected to the 2nd team, and linebacker Jabril Cox was named to the 3rd team. North Dakota State led the nation with 6 players selected to the Stats FCS All-American team. Both Radens and Tuska were on the 1st team there. Cox was named Stats All-American 2nd team, while Zach Johnson and tight end Ben Ellefson made the 3rd team. Trey Lance will be either a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd team All-American based on the results of the Walter Payton Award announced the night before the championship game. Finally, 13 of NDSU's 14 seniors walked through graduation yesterday. For most of them, there will be life after football. But you can bet the next time they're on a football field, after today, there may not be another football game for them. It will be the next chapter in their life. Earlier today, I asked Matt Entz about those seniors and how they'll succeed off the football field. Graduated yesterday. Just give a sense for those guys. Not all of them will have a career after North Dakota State football, but give us a sense of what football has meant to those guys and how they'll carry it over into their lives.
Well, hopefully there's been some life lessons that have been learned along the way, and perseverance, hard work, dedication, the friendships they have with the guys in the locker room and the assistant coaches and myself will be things that they'll have forever. I think no group of the former players, the association that they have, the connection that they have still is unbelievable. And I can't say enough about these guys in our senior class. The leadership, the dedication, the chip on their shoulder that they kind of had going into the season has been much appreciated.
Crazy how that senior class, all the hours they've put in, one final game in the Fargo Dome. It's pretty special.
It is. We talked about that this morning. And one final game, but a lasting legacy. And challenge those guys to continue to protect the family, continue to build Bison legacy, and make sure that they enrich the uniform before they leave.
When you look in the mirror, do you see a little bit of Montana State looking back at you? The two teams seem very similar, at least on paper.
Well, yeah. I mean, both want to run the football. Both want to play good defense. I think that's I think a lot of teams that have success out there pride themselves on those two things. Now they run the ball out of more 11 personnel than we might, but there's some subtle differences. But I think the philosophy behind it all is very similar.
What's the last thing you'll stress to the team about winning this football game, what it's going to take to win this football game when you leave the locker room?
Energy and execution. Those are the two things that I'll challenge them with, and we got to play with great energy. We got to thrive off the playing in the dome, and we can't make mistakes, and we control that. Has nothing, and with all respect to Montana State, has nothing to do with what they do. We're going to control our own destiny by handling those two things.
Good luck today, and thank you for doing this all season long. Merry Christmas, and go get them.
You too. Thank you, guys.
When you are 4 quarters to Frisco, this is what it looks like to get inside the Fargo Dome and get to your sold-out seat. Much more to do when we come back on the pregame show. We're getting ready for football.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
Welcome back to the Fargo Dome. The Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show rolls on here as we are getting closer and closer to kickoff here in the FCF semifinals between North Dakota State and Montana State. Brian Shawn, Kyle Emanuel, and Lee Timmerman back with you. Thanks for joining us here this morning as we get set for this one coming up here in just a couple of moments. And we start off with our Bobcat heavy lifting report. And it's the quarterback, a redshirt freshman, the Rice Award winner, Trey Lance.
Yeah, a guy I could probably pick every single week. I think I picked him South Dakota State, but this one's just obvious to me, Brian. I mean, look at last week. Obviously, the offense struggled a little bit. The running game wasn't there. I think we might see something similar. Look, Montana State has a really good front seven. They stopped the run really well. Trey obviously has to be good throwing the ball, but I also think you're going to see the +1 run game. We talked about it with Wildcat with Montana State. I think you're going to see Trey run the ball a little bit more. He's going to have to be dynamic in this game, and that's why I picked him as my Bobcat heavy lifted impact player.
Yeah, I think you're right, Kyle. I think Trey Lance is going to be heavily involved in the run game today, and the beauty of him doing that is you don't need to bring in different personnel. That's what Montana State has to. We've talked a lot about the Wildcat. Well, what's the Wildcat? That's their throwing quarterback who can't run. Yep. The Bison, number 5, can do it all, do both of it, and I think he's going to be heavily involved in the run game today.
And then you don't know what's coming, right? And you run the ball, play action can come off of that. A lot of it can come off of that quarterback run game.
And how frustrating is it, too, even when you get North Dakota State in a 3rd and long, Trey can just scramble and run for a first down. That has to be disheartening as a defensive player. Look, we had these guys stopped, and now we have to get back and stop them again.
Especially as a rusher, because you work so hard to get by these 300-plus pound, really good athletes. You finally get by him. You're in a 3rd and long. All right, let's pass rush, and then he just takes off. It's a helpless feeling. It really is. And then it kind of can take away from your coverage. Now, when you have a quarterback in scramble, maybe we have to play more zone. Maybe they like to play more man or do different concepts. Maybe you have to keep a spy. And there's different things you have to do with your coverage. So it can do a lot to a defense when you have to deal with a quarterback that can run, and we've seen him time and time do it over and over this year.
Well, Kyle, you mentioned coverage. Just one thing I want to throw out there real quick. He's number 2. I forgot his name, but you'll see him, the corner. He's about this tall. And the Bison want to pick on this kid. He had a bad game against Albany. Albany picked on him a lot. The Bison think, and Trey Lance, if he looks to throw to the outside, especially if number 2 is guarding the wideout, and if it's Christian Watson, they'll go to him.
And I would anticipate some perimeter run today. I think they want to test those corners to see how anxious they are to tackle in the running game. That'll be interesting as well as this one plays out in the early going. Let's jump now into our Pro C Players Roundtable and talk about Montana State's offensive unit. They look a little weird when they line up in the running game. The quarterback's in the shotgun a lot. They'll line up 3 backs to one side. They'll go into similar to what North Dakota State's Delta formation is. They do a lot of weird things, but I think North Dakota State's going to simplify things today.
Yeah, they do, and I was watching them, and I saw all the things you're talking about, Brian, but when it comes down to it, they do remind me a little bit of what NDSU does with the different motions. They're going to bring in some jet sweeps. They don't do much quarterback run game with Tucker Rovig, but they do the same kind of actions. They're going to throw the play action off of the running game. This team broke a school record for rushing yards in a season. We're going to see them run the ball. We've kind of seen similar teams throughout this playoffs in the Fargo Dome. They're going to try and run the ball, and then they're going to try and take play action shots, and we'll see if they can do it. I've said it before, but I think they have to get over 20 points if they want to win this game, which has not been easy to do against this Bison defense.
A lot of the concepts pre-snap concepts that you'll see today from the Bison defense is what they did against Southern when Southern had that good quarterback who came in, or Wildcat guy. So a lot of those same types of thought process that NDSU did and worked in Carbondale, they're doing it again. And when you see crazy personnel, Grant Olson tells me we're going to one call, we're going simple, and we're going. Not making it complicated today.
You had talked about it in the keys to the game, that this double eagle look with 5 defensive linemen, how does that change things, not only for the defensive line, but how the offensive line has to adjust to that?
Well, now you have to account for those guys, right? A lot of times the offensive line, and Lee knows this, but you're trying to get to that second level. Now you have to deal with 5 guys in the line of scrimmage. I think they like it because it makes it easier for linebackers to kind of flow and make plays.
I think number 42 might have a really good day today.
Yeah.
I think Jabril Cox is in for it. A lot of teams have taken him out of the equation by going the other way. But if Montana State wants to go to some plays that they've shown, I think Jabril Cox has a big day today.
I think Jabril's anxious too. Missed a couple tackles last week he would normally make. Real quickly, let's speak about Derek Tuska. You know, Jeff Choate said this week in his press conference he's probably one of the best players we're going to see all year. I think that warrants how dynamic this guy is coming off the edge. Can't say enough about what he's been able to accomplish here, not only in his career, but especially in his senior season.
Yeah, and as a former defensive end, I'm obviously proud of him. He kind of reminds me of an old...
Who did the same type of things that for NDSU, Kyle, you did that Derek is asked to,
yeah,
right?
He's a 91, kind of reminds me of an old Mike Hardy.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. He's way better than Mike Hardy. I had to give my old teammate a shout, but he's just been consistent all year. He really has. You look at him every single game, they're either chipping him, they're bringing a running back at him, they're doing something, and he continually gets clean. He beats his guy one-on-one. That's what you want to see as a pass rusher. I think he's athletic enough, especially you're looking ahead, go to the NFL, he's athletic enough. He could drop, do some different things that way. But he's been a big part of this defense, and he'll be a big part today as well.
Defensive keys for you guys. What else are you paying attention to today for North Dakota State? You talked about the simplified game plan. NDSU wins defensively if they do what?
Have the right adjustment to the personnel group they're seeing, and that's just some things we talked about during the keys that Grant Olson says. That don't worry so much about where they're lined up, but who's in the game is what happens. And if they recognize that, the Bison will play fast and play well.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off what Lee said earlier in the simplification of it. I talked about it when we were talking about Wildcat down in the field with Ryan, but a lot of times when you get into games like this, there's a lot of motion happening when you get into Wildcat. It's simplifying. It's knowing what you want to do, and don't try to make everything so complicated. Just be where you need to be, trust your teammates, do your job, make tackles, and defense can be kind of simple in that way.
All right, guys, we're getting set close to kickoff here. About 5 minutes to go on the Coors Light countdown clock. We'll be back to wrap things up, have our final thoughts after one more timeout here on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
This is the Farmers Union Insurance Bison Football Pregame Show.
We are just moments away from kickoff on our Coors Light countdown clock. Let's get the final thoughts of our crew. We start with Brian Shawn and Lee Timmerman. Guys?
All right, thanks so much, Alex. I think my final thought going into this game, and for me, the tight ends. I just feel like they're due for a breakout game, and I expect an explosive play out of the Big Ten, out of the tight end group in the red zone. I think those are the guys you got to get going to score touchdowns.
Well, the tight ends might be a part of my final thought. It's 3 letters. It's called FIB, which stands for Formation Into the Boundary. The boundary is the short side of the field. The wide side they call the field. But Montana's defensive players, the best players, are field players, meaning they play to the wide side. The Bison feel that they have some advantages personnel-wise into the short side, which might open up a tight end. But look for Trey Lance to run on that side as well.
Fourth quarter has belonged to the Bison. This week when NDSU, those players put up those 4 fingers and hold them up before the fourth quarter, it means something. Not only are we 4 quarters from Frisco, but this 4, that's how well North Dakota State has played in the fourth quarter. I look for the fourth quarter, NDSU to dominate that quarter. Kyle, you've held these fingers up before. You know what this 4 means. Merry Christmas, Kyle, by the way.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ryan. Merry Christmas to you as well. Look, when I look at this game, and this is something I mentioned in the very first game of the year against Butler, and it's something you can mention every single game, but it comes down to the trenches. Every single game comes down to the offensive, defensive line and who's going to win that battle. And I think, especially when you look at this matchup, Montana State, they like to run the ball. We all know North Dakota State likes to run the ball. What's going to give there? I think I've said it throughout the show, but I think if NDSU can get to 20, 21 points, they have a good shot at winning this game. But controlling the line of scrimmage on both sides is going to be key for both of these teams. Alex, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Kyle. Yeah, we hope that this Bison football team will keep this season alive. The next time we join you on the Farmers Union Insurance Bison football pregame show, we hope is from Frisco, Texas. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody, flip the game on ESPN2. Have a good one.